Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us again. Today, we're actually joined by Daniel Stillman. Now, Daniel Stillman is the author of the just came out, congrats on that, Good Talk, which is all around how we can design better conversations, since he is a conversation designer. It's not often I get to meet someone who has another unique job title. And I actually had the pleasure of being in one of his master facilitation classes, as well as one of his icebreaker classes. So I thought, since so many of us are moving online into the virtual facilitation space, it would be great to get a chance to talk with him and get some of his ideas, his thoughts based on his own experience on how we could all do that a little bit better. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a real pleasure. This is obviously extremely important stuff for people to get a handle on. Facilitation and architecting and designing better conversations was always important. And now we're noticing how terribly, terribly terrible we are at it on the internet, because most people don't have enough practice on it. And we're just, as I say, like we've been modern humans for 40,000 years, walking around in 3 dimensions, and we still sometimes trip. So why do we expect it to be easy?
So I actually, that makes me, I had a question about that. To what extent do you think that in the face-to-face facilitation environment, we were able to cover up for things a lot better? Like, I just get this sense that in the online environment, people who their charisma was able to carry it through, they were educators. Exactly. So like, I feel like in my face-to-face sessions previously, it's not that they were bad. I like to imagine that they were quite nice, but I think I was better able to paper over the rough patches just on the fly. Whereas now it's almost that Zoom and everything has made it so transparent in terms of what's a good structured and unstructured dialogue and what isn't. Yeah. So
there's 2 parts of that. One is, I think we got a lot for free when we were in person, because we were just, I'm an okay visual facilitator. And one of my habits was to draw a poster of the agenda for the day and just put it on the wall. And that always helped me. I had the agenda on the wall, and I could also point to it anytime. And people, when you point, they look where you're pointing, just automatically. It's just body language and orienting in space with vision and allowing the space to hold the intelligence of what we want to do. So that just came for free, right? And now it is harder because context switching saps our energy. And so this is like, and I'm sure you've been at some meetings where it's like, okay, so we're in Zoom, now we're on Mural, now we're on Mentimeter, now I've got slides. Okay, come back over here. Oh shit, it's not working. Like, okay, let's open up Google Slides and work there together. And we're just all over the place. And every time we switch from one place to another, there's a cognitive drain, and there's time lost. And so I think that's the other problem, is that we used to be able to meet for a whole day, right? Meeting from 9 to 5 was this luxurious full day experience. We showed up 30 minutes early. We had coffee. We might get to talk to the instructor for a minute or two. We had these breaks. We could walk outside. We could have casual conversations with people. And then after the workshop was over, like, we might be able to ask the instructor a couple of extra questions. And all of that, none of that happens on the internet unless you do it on purpose. And I'm hearing this from people who, like, my fiance is down the hall, she's at work, and if she wants to like have a happy hour, she's got to schedule it. If she wants to have a, hey, can I ask you a quick question? She's got to like schedule it. We have to schedule. Exactly. It's so hard. And so what I've been doing with the facilitation masterclass is, and I can't remember if I was doing this when you were in it, is like just having some office hours, like
you did, yeah,
a little bit before, and now I'm hanging out afterwards, like just for another half an hour after the workshop's over, and having a little bit, because our time has to be so structured, because we have so little of it now. I'm like, it's nice to add in a little sprinkle of some unstructured time. And so I just put that on my calendar. The hour before and the hour after are just part of But if I booked it, if I made it part of the workshop and said, hey, so there's this like floofy bullshit hour before and after the workshop, and it's part of the workshop, people would be like, what is this super unstructured hour beginning and ending this workshop? I don't get it. Like, why am I paying for a 4-hour workshop when Daniel's not just talking to me for 4 hours straight? And I don't think
that's one
that
of
would be really fun to anybody.
honestly, the funniest things to me is that idea that that you have to be talking the entire time. Now, thankfully, most clients have moved away from that at least.
We're paying you to learn and develop us. So
Correct.
Tell us.
So you should tell us stuff. Just talk at us. It's like, that's not really, that should be done asynchronously, a lot of that kind of stuff. But I mean, that does touch on a number of things. I mean, I've been adding half an hour on the end of all my sessions. I actually, even in the Zoom, it's like if it's a 90-minute session, I book in 2 hours. And we are trying to simplify our tools. Like I'm using virtual backgrounds to have any text I've got up there, or unlike the Miro or the Mural, whatever you're using, I'm, rather than having them go to a Mentimeter or this here, embedding it all in that single space. So it's not just, I think people can pay attention to like 2 spaces max is just, it's like you're in Miro or Mural or you're in Zoom and that's it, nothing else.
And so what's funny to me about this, and this is why I love your title of conversation architect, is that I was explaining to somebody how when we ran real person sessions and we had like 30 people in the room and you send people to breakout sessions, it takes time for them to get there. And it took time for them to get back. And I've done sessions where, I had 30 people in a room that was big enough for 100 people. And there were concrete walls and it echoed, and it was so hard to get the group back to the center to pay attention and to listen. We are working in a space that we are not oriented to. And it's our jobs as facilitators to orient people to that space. And it's just the online space, it's easier to get lost. I feel it's more elastic. We used to do this thing where you say, clap once if you can hear me, clap twice if you can hear me. It would only take me like a minute and a half to get a room of 100 to focus on me. And now if I close the breakout rooms and I have 60 seconds of buffer time, because isn't that generous to give them an extra minute? Some people are going to click on that button and show up and, oh, sorry, I was in the middle of something. Can you send me back? And I'm like, I can't. I literally can't send you back there. There's no there there. It
doesn't work that way. Exactly.
It doesn't work there. The rooms are closing and I can't send anybody back in. And so I think the tools we have shape us. We shape our tools and then our tools shape us. I forget who said that, but it's really true. And I think what you're seeing is this explosion of tools where people are trying new things. Never has my background as a UX designer frustrated me more. Like, I'm sure you've seen this.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But I mean, even into the simplest, like one thing I've noticed is if you've ever used Blue Jeans, which is a terrible, terrible tool.
Completely agree. Even though sadly it's the second best, but it's terrible still.
But so what happens in Zoom when you share a screen is automatically it just shoves everything off to the side. And it's really, you can get people and content together, but you have to work for it. Whereas Blue Jeans has a button. They have what we call in UX a top level affordance. There's a button that says, hey, I'd like all people, I'd like all content, I'd like some people and some content. It looks like a slider. It's not. It kind of acts like a slider, but it's not. But you can literally say like, oh, no, I'd like some people and some content, please. And that's a feature.
I love that level of control.
Yes, but it means that they had an opinion about what the experience should be. They've thought about the conversation. They've thought like, how would we like to design this conversation? And this is the difference between Miro and Mural. Like you said this yourself, like Mural is a facilitator's tool. I can summon people. There's voting.
You've got that now. Finally.
You've got that. Why is this a we? Us and a we?
We've stolen it. We're stealing it.
It's an arms race, right?
It is.
So
they just opened up. They've got those beautiful templates, including your conversation OS is one of the templates over on Mural, which is fantastic to play around. They now have the Miroverse. That's literally what they're calling it. And they've gotten like AJ and Smart and a whole bunch of other people to populate that with like 50 top practitioner templates. They just turned it on this week. So I was like, oh, I wonder where they got that idea from. So
I really
it is this
get on that.
arms race.
But
Honestly,
you're seeing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I mean, honestly, I think we as users are beginning to benefit from that. I wish that there was more of a race going on with the video platforms to improve the features, because I would love to, even things like Adobe Connect is a nightmare of complexity, but it does have really interesting use of persistent pods. And just the fact that, like you said with Zoom, when you turn off a room, it's gone, poof, which is why I love to combine Zoom with Mural or Miro, because you need to have a persistent space to have that knowledge there. I mean, you had this great quote in your book, while voice is better than text per tone, paper has a better memory than I do. Zoom wants to remove the memory of what happened in the room. And that's just not very helpful if you don't combine it with something else.
Yeah, and so I'm just starting to play with Microsoft Teams. Client asked if I could do a session on Microsoft Teams, and it's really imagining if Zoom and Slack had a baby. And
that's the best analogy, actually, of it.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things that I really have enjoyed about following you, and I think you're absorbing a lot of the tools that are on the edges, and they're very rough hewn. I remember, like, I don't know if it was you or somebody else was like, "Oh, here's Sococo," and I'm like, "That looks terrible," right? But
skeuomorphism to the max.
Right, but you hacked that in your session by embedding video into a mural space, right? And so we can create digital spaces that allow certain things and make some things easier and make some things harder. I did a session in Hopin, which made running an open space dialogue easier, right? And so, like, but it made a lot of other things hard. And my friend Douglas Ferguson, who was my co-facilitator for this large virtual meetings workshop that we run, he pointed out, he's like, when you're using a new tool with people and the tool doesn't work, people blame you.
Exactly.
and they blame the tool. When Zoom doesn't work, people are like, oh, the internet must be bad. Like, oh, my connection's not good. Oh, I'll just restart it, because it's like Kleenex. It's the vacuum cleaner. It's a Hoover. Oh, I'll just restart my computer. It's fine. Yeah. People are fine with it, except for the fact that it's not perfect. But if you take somebody into a new tool or a new place, they're like, Mural's not working for me. I'm like, well, are you using a modern browser? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm on Safari. All the icons are black. I'm like,
oh, geez. I was in the session where that actually happened. Yeah, I remember that. It was hilariously funny. God. I mean, that's why we always set up, like, with anytime we're using one of the Canvas spaces, which I think will just be, basically, I'm of the opinion that with facilitation virtually, any sort of these kind of sessions, if people are not having some sort of Canvas space, then they're not really facilitating. They're just missing out on one of the, like, basic, that's my hard line that I'm drawing.
I actually disagree with you 100%.
Oh, now I'm very curious.
Well, and
yeah,
so
now
we
I'm
have
damn curious.
Well, so we have a shared space here. We have audio and we have video.
True.
And I have intentionally made myself small so that I can look at you. Like, I designed this space when I usually hide myself view, but since we're recording this, I kind of want to know what I look like. And so I design this space. I architect my Zoom space. Most people just have, hey, gallery view, we're in Brady Bunch view. That's great. I can see everybody. But when in a meeting, would you be able to check out yourself constantly? Right. And so I designed this space so that I am focusing 100% on you and we are having a conversation. I co-facilitate a men's group. We meet on Zoom and we talk about our feelings and our emotions, and we help each other go deeper into our emotions and experiences, and we are facilitating each other. And there is the shared canvas is...
That doesn't need a canvas, yeah.
That doesn't need a canvas, and the canvas would be distracting. It pulls us out from the dialogue. And so facilitation can still be pure dialogue. And this goes to the Dan Rome session, like one of your questions, like, what are some of the best sessions I've seen? I loved your session on Radically Remote, even though it was your rough prototype. I love that it was a rough prototype, and I think people need to be prototyping. But Dan Rome's session at the Rise conference last night in Bangkok. Remember that time we were in Bangkok last night?
Of course, exactly. We were all in Bangkok yesterday.
We were all in Bangkok yesterday, virtually. All he did was slow down the conversation and break it up into clear pieces and draw with us at each beat of the dialogue. And so I think and then he was like, okay, take a piece of paper, fold it in 4, label each of the boxes this, draw this in this box, draw this in that box, draw that in that box. And this is what I would do in an in-person workshop. He just had us doing it from 1,000 miles away. And so the shared shared canvas was my shared canvas, and we held it up to the screen. And it was like, cool, okay, cool. So here, you 2 people are holding up your drawings. You get to share out your ideas, right? And this idea that we have to be able to upload it and, oh, how do I get the pictures from my phone into this thing?
That's difficult. Yeah.
Do I actually shove my phone through my laptop? Is that how I do it? Because I don't know how to use the technology. And I think I agree with you. People will get better at Mural, and Mural will get better, and Mural will get better, and people will get better at it. But we should meet people where they are, which is why it's always good to have Google Slides in the background, or just know how to talk to people and get them through the exercise, from exercise to exercise. If you're facilitating a strategic session, yes, having a shared canvas helps. A shared canvas becomes a third point in the conversation. It helps us triangulate meaning.
It creates ownership.
It creates ownership. It creates clarity. 100%. But it is not a requirement. Sorry for being so tried and done.
No, actually that makes sense. So it's, I guess I'm framing it in terms of the kind of workshops coming from a very narrow lens. I'm not leading any men's groups, so we're not doing. But I know how to put it. If you were suddenly doing a men's group, having let's all go to the canvas and put our feelings up on there and do this. That it's just awkward. Yeah. It's putting a very strange clinical lens onto something that doesn't require.
I've done that. It's actually called art therapy, and it totally works. Like, I've definitely gotten people to draw, but I think I'm thinking about like a lot of the senior sessions, like executive coaching that I do, or executive visioning sessions. Like, some of it is, we should have a canvas, but some of it is, can we actually look at each other and talk to each other and hear what the other person as human beings. And I think, as people say, like, I can't feel the room, I can't connect to people, like, and I'm like, then you are screwed if you don't learn how to connect to people. Like, did you not talk to people over the phone in junior high school? Like, you don't know how to connect to people with just their voice? Like, you can't feel another person from 1,000 miles away by just reading their face? Like, you got to work on your human skills.
Oh,
right?
Honestly, a lot of people can't do it face to face. So as you've seen in some sessions. Yeah, it's just, yeah. So it's the question of, how do we make it better?
How do we get intentional about our conversations, right?
So I guess I've got time for one last question, don't I? There's so many to ask.
There's so many to ask.
There's so many to ask, but that's fine. You have a great free course on Podia on hats of facilitators. And the reason I came to this is I'm getting a daily mail of the hats, and I'm actually enjoying that. I'm saving them. I'm loving that.
So much. If they work for you, that means that it's good.
Oh no, it's hella good. It's I want you to have a book. I honestly want Stillman's book of hats. That's
coming. That's coming.
Bloody well better be. So I want that. So if there was like one hat that you wish facilitators use more in sessions, I know we want to use them all, but what's the one most people forget to use?
Oh my God. So I just wrote an essay about this. I don't know if you got the email about time.
Yeah, I quoted your thing on time. Actually, I've got, that was one of my other questions I had in here, which was actually on.
Whenever I say the word time,
up and yeah.
Oh yeah, add up, and round
anchoring,
up, yeah, all of that. So it's like, time is this funny thing. Every time I hear myself say the word time, I forget the song from like the '60s. Time. And there's some clanking noises, and I think there's this
time after time.
Time after time. Yeah, there's probably millions of songs about time. I think I used to have a very mechanistic view of time. When I first started as a facilitator, when I first started teaching design thinking workshops to non-designers, and this is back in like 2010, 2011, I didn't get into the learning and development space on purpose. It was like accidental. It's like, everyone should know this. This is great. We should get together. I had a very aggressive and mechanistic view of time, and there was this idea of the time cop. So I don't know if you've seen the new videos on the course where it's like these two hats was like, I'm going to be the time cop, or I would hand the time cop hat to somebody else and they would be our time cop. And Time Cop is A, terrible movie, B, a really aggressive approach to tracking time. And not everybody loves the police. Not everybody wants to be policed, right? Policing does not feel like being served and protected, which is the motto of the police in New York City, to serve and protect. Right? So like, what does it really mean to be aware of and to track time? Are we going to be aggressive with it? Are we going to be hard with it? Or are we going to be soft with it? And
It's tricky.
sometimes, and it's tricky. It's
in a short
tricky.
90-minute session, it's crazy tricky.
So can we turn an unforgiving minute into 60 seconds worth of distance run? That's a Rudyard Kipling quote. It's from the famous poem, If. And if we are soft on time, we won't get to everything we need. Maybe. But you and I both know, if you've ever worked with a co-facilitator, you're like, I got to start shaving. That's what wasn't in the, it wasn't in the email. It's like, we got to start shaving. What can we shave? Let's just start shaving minutes off of things. We can cut that, right?
You can't.
And so we're always, and you can't always unless you pad. If you pad, you can shave.
Round
or you
up
can
always, yeah.
round up always. And there's this other idea of flexing. So like I went to somebody's talk where they talked about like, you say to your co-facilitator, I need to flex here. Like this needs more time. They're not there yet. We can't get them there versus like, we are where we are and we're going to go to the next activity when it's incomplete. And so this is not being a time cop. This is being a time shaper. This is being like gooey, like I'm stirring a pot of gooey time. And am I stretching it out? We all know that you can sit with a hard question for a minute. It can seem like hours, or, you know, when you're away from a loved one, it can seem like days. And so people need to be more thoughtful with the time hat and not just be like the lightning decision jam. I don't actually think gets people into a creative space of like, okay, boom, brainstorm everyone. Okay, cool. Let's not vote. And yet it's some people's first exposure to, oh my God, structuring logically sequenced activities and tight time boxes gets tremendous results. And it does, but it doesn't get you to the next stage. And for that, I think you need to start to, it's level one. And so that's the second part of that essay about time, where we get people to start thinking about, how do I ask questions to get people to think about how this all started or where we really want to go.
Is the third part how I can convince my clients to let me do a lot less in my sessions so I can go a lot deeper with these topics?
And so that's in the email, there's this, my friend, oh man, I'm blanking on his name, but he puts fake things in his agenda that he knows he'll never get to. And I mean, he works, yes, and everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I totally want to come to that creative brainstorming session if we're going to talk about all that. And then he never gets to them. I think eventually you'll get in trouble for that. But I think people need to look at time as, yes, we need to have this mechanistic approach. I have a wall of workshops that I'm working on. And at some point, I got to get that into Session Lab and start being honest with myself about what's possible. But I also need to think about the arc of the time. And how am I actually shaping it well? How am I getting people to think about the past and think about the future and come into the present?
You talked about this with your narrative structuring, which I absolutely loved. I have that download, the PDF you've got on what's the actual narrative arc. And I think that was my favorite phrase actually from that little piece. The blog entry on it was, how can we get people really, really thinking about the future and really thinking about the past? And it's much, much harder to actually do in reality, and to get them to actually spend the time with it.
Yeah. And so I think people should learn how to time box, time flex and time shave, but people also need to learn how to like time bend.
Mm.
And that's what I think that's that level 2, level 3 work as a facilitator where you really get people. And that's what I loved about my friend Ron, who got people to think about, it's hard to get people to think 10 years in the future. But if you can actually facilitate that process, then you can get people to start building that future now. And time boxing, time flexing, and time estimation, that's table stakes.
It's drive-by facilitation too often. It's just like really, really quickly. It's like just drive-through facilitation. Yeah, we covered this, but we haven't really embodied it, and it really is a challenge. I think also just allowing time for positive awkwardness. Things take a bit of time to warm up. A lot of that, like the open space, that, whereas there's that awkward moment where they're first around it, where like for the first 3 or 4 minutes, people are sitting around, what do we do? I'm not really sure about this. Well, nobody wants to necessarily speak first, but then it just explodes into the ideas. But it took
Yes.
those 3 or 4 minutes where if a potentially an outside observer be like, what's going on? You're wasting time, and you're not. You're allowing thoughts to begin processing internally before they're externalized. And that's just something that's too often skipped in a quick session.
Yeah, well, so like one of the fundamental proponents of lean and agile is that systems with no slack are brittle.
That
Right?
makes perfect sense.
Right. So a company that is, except for when you have true stress on a system, and then the lean supply chain breaks. People need to have slack in the system as well. Workshops need to have slack in the system as well. And having that buffer time where if you have to be what I would call, an old coworker of mine used to call an aggressive but possible agenda. You're like, we can do all of that, but everything has to go 100% right. There's no opportunity for one new question.
Not Malcolm Gladwell, sorry, Ian Malcolm. I'm misquoting. Malcolm Gladwell is Tipping Point. Ian Malcolm, Jurassic Park. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. It's
right. Yeah.
Get a bit more Ian Malcolm in our sessions. Awesome.
I agree.
Well, thank you very much, Daniel. This has been an absolute pleasure. I would actually love to talk for hours and hours, but
it's fun to nerd out with another conversation nerd. I hope this conversation winds up being helpful for people.
Oh God, it's very helpful for me at the very least. And so selfishly, that's all that truly matters. And I noticed you're sitting down for this conversation instead of standing up in front of your bookshelf. So you've shifted the dynamics of space there.
Well, this is a more casual coffee.
I like that.
Coffee conversation.
And Daniel, as a note, does color code his books, as you'll notice out of the corner there, which is fantastic.
Everyone should. It creates a more restful environment.
It is beautiful. I
and on
think
purpose,
we do ours by size.
At the top, so it blends into the ceiling better.
Yeah, upper right-hand corner. What's that? Oh, there's a book called Good Talk. We'll include links to that as well as Daniel's courses in the videos below. Daniel, thank you so much for this. This has been a great talk. I hope everybody else found it useful as well. He has a ton of free resources, although you should also buy his book. He has a ton of free resources. Please do check him out. If you're not convinced by looking at those, then I don't know what will convince you. Thank you so much, Daniel.